Rain, the Grand Sage, is a mage who can duplicate any object with pure mastery. So when he racked up achievements, the Trueborn Society actually let him in, even though he was born as a prisoner. But for anyone with the money, they could grab as much as they wanted. If one loaf turns into two, then two people eat. Simple, right? That was his dream, but when he tried to double a single gemstone, it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a curse. But a threat so lethal it could crack the foundation of value itself. And for the Trueborn who feasted on prosperity, it didn't look like anything but raw danger. Rain got trapped by the mighty noble Duke Damien. He got mocked and cursed for not having noble blood in his veins. He got murdered in cold, calculated deceit, cursing for revenge as the rain poured down in his final, dying breath, recreated his very own soul. Then the seed of revenge gets planted inside the Duke's wife's womb. Right there, his vengeance finally starts. And just like that, he was reborn, again, as the hated mortal enemy's son. In time, the great sage finally took the throne and ruled with unstoppable power. Finally, he grabbed the neck of his hated father with both hands, who soaked up every drop of worldly spring like it was pure ecstasy. Late at night, the bright moon spilled over the dim streets of the capital, painting everything in silver. A brutally injured man limped past, blood running off his lips as he pressed into the wall for support, his hand clamped over the gash in his stomach. Looking back, it was like this whole thing had been planned from the start. Knights stormed into every alley he could have slipped into, blades ready, and the crowd jeered him as they shoved insults. Filthy ex-prisoner, coward, and some wretched nobody born low. But RMC could only clench his teeth, sprint away, and still, his injuries were so brutal he couldn't last. And then he tripped hard, crashing straight to the ground. That's when a barefoot girl spotted him. Her master demanded RMC's death, and the girl obeyed on the spot without even blinking. And magic tore through his entire body, scorching him alive until he was shrieking in agony. Yeah, that's right, it was all man-made. Even after getting invited to the Damien family's party. The way his whole existence got erased. And everything that came after that, too. A few hours earlier, back at the Damien estate, the Duke threw a massive party, and right when everyone was laughing, he unveiled a mysterious special guest. A razor-sharp genius, and the very same prodigy the imperial court just crowned as the Grand Sage. The second MC Rain showed up. Murmurs swarmed through the hole like a living hush. The nobles immediately clocked him as the mastermind behind the replication. The replication magic he uncovered is going to blow up everything they think they know. Mastercrafted magic stones, forged by an artisan who's long gone, relics from a dead civilization. Being able to reproduce them over and over is pure gold. Rain might still be trapped as a prisoner, for now. But whispers say he's about to rise, get a title, and finally get his hands on land. They're letting him in early, like they're rolling out the red carpet just for him. Women swarmed him, praising him with razor-sharp words, but the rain of attention caught him off guard. He felt completely out of place. That's why the second he spotted a chance to slip away, he took it, bolted for the balcony and vanished from sight, and yeah, he's wiped clean. Now he finally got to peer into the nobles' world. This one hole alone could swallow his entire tenement back home, and it was like staring at a whole different universe. Right then, a maid swooped up to him, sliding a glass of wine toward him. Rain was thanking her as he snatched the drink. Then his face lit up because he suddenly recognized her. Wait, she's Azid from the landlord's place, right? She's grown up so much. I heard she ended up working as a maid at a noble's house, but I had no idea it was the Damiens. He still remembers her barging into his room like clockwork, bossing him around for wasting all his money on books. It's been so long now. He can't even tell how many years have passed since they last saw each other. The kid he used to change nappies for has grown up way too fast, and Azed's cheeks burned red with embarrassment. Why is he bringing that up out of nowhere? Rain shot out a quick apology. It just slipped. But then she blurted the real problem. She couldn't keep calling him Lord. It was way too formal. Still, Azed wouldn't back down, and she couldn't exactly change that as a maid. Still, yeah, he's a straight-up genius, because he can multiply anything forever without limit. She can't stop wondering how much cash they've pulled in by now, money, not anything else. And honestly, she hasn't changed a single bit. Rain made it painfully obvious that the whole, anything infinitely, line was nothing but a do-blown exaggeration. His replication's powerful, but it's not some unstoppable god mode. Sure, in theory he can copy anything, but yeah, not quite. It's way easier if he just shows you. Because the rain had already plucked a flower right from the vase sitting on the balcony railings, and blasted magic into it to copy it perfectly once it was done. He shoved it into AZ's hands, then it instantly wilted. And here's the catch. Your ability to replicate it perfectly hinges on how well you grasp the object's physical build and magical makeup. So yeah, it all comes down to how deep your understanding goes. Just staring at it and giving it a light touch won't magically make a flawless copy. And honestly, he'd never cared about flowers in the first place. And the more tangled a thing gets, the longer it takes. Because the higher its nobility, the more brutal the grind becomes. Trying to copy counterfeit coins so they'd pass the test would cost way too much, and it'd never be worth it. And that's even more true for art and craft work. Try it on a living being, and she'll show you the damage firsthand with that wilted flower. But there's something his thesis never even hints at, one weird exception. Hold up, why is she laughing? Right here, this is his moment, and Azad can finally breathe. The kid from that tenement she once called her big brother. He's now the grand sage, dressed in fine clothes, showing up at noble parties. But Rain's still Rain, and nothing's going to change that. Even if he looks different, he's still the same shy bookworm who only ever cared about magic. A tiny blush sparked across his cheeks as he asked, quietly, if that was meant to be a compliment. Azad burst out laughing and shoved him right back inside, like, come on, don't just stand there. The party was still roaring, so now he had to start rubbing shoulders with the nobles for his future. Rain froze for a second. He'd rather stay close to her and talk, but her fierce insistence wouldn't let up, and in the end he caved and stepped back inside. Chaos exploded the second he stepped into the hall, because a nobleman was already roaring that a thief had slipped inside. The Duke barreled toward him, demanding answers, so the nobleman yanked open the chest he'd been clutching, revealing their blue diamond family heirloom inside. They'd only pulled it from the vault to show off to their guests, and something felt terribly off. The Duke snatched the necklace and barked that it was right there. But when he took a closer look, everything changed. He finally clocked it, an imposter, a full-on replica. It's insanely well made, but the details don't match, no question about it. The nobleman stared at it like it couldn't be real. That necklace wasn't just any piece, it was crafted by a legendary master. So tell me, who in the world could pull off a copy like that? He paused, and the Duke instantly got what that meant. Yeah, there's someone who could pull that off. Slowly, their heads swiveled toward the fresh rain like it had just arrived, insisting they didn't do a thing. He knew there was no way he could ever recreate something that intricate. So he whipped his gaze across the hall, pleading with anyone who'd listen. But those people hit him with scornful stares and mocking smirks. But it was already too late. Right then it hit him hard. He'd been played, set up from the start. When he forged this magic, he swore one loaf of bread could split into two, so two people could finally eat. But for them, wanting more was easy, just pay and grab more. To them, a gemstone turning into two wasn't a blessing at all. It wasn't just a threat. It was a force that could smash the idea of value right out of the world. Suddenly, Azad snapped to attention, grabbed the wilted flower the rain had left her with, and tried to shove his words out, because he knew he could never, ever do something like that. But before she could finish, Rain clamped his hand on her shoulder, snapped a magic decree, and ordered her to shut her mouth. No matter what she says, nothing changes, so if talking is only going to weigh her down, then yeah, this is the better way. Panic exploded the second they realized he'd fired off a spell like it was nothing, right on cue, and everybody lost it. Knights burst in on the Duke's orders, rushing straight at Rain to take her down. Rain pounded the curtain beside him, like the storm wanted in, and unleashed replication, making curtains crash down like a storm, slamming into everyone's heads. Giving him time to bolt, of course. The knights snapped back to their senses and bolted after him. Meanwhile, in the hall, the Duke strode up, claimed he'd take full responsibility as host, then ordered everyone to hand it all over to him. But that only sharpened the nobles' doubts, because Rain is still the grand sage, and they just can't stomach the idea that someone like him could be wiped out that easily. A sinister grin slithered across the Duke's face. House Damien's honor is on the line, and they've got special measures ready for exactly this moment. Azad watched from behind, gripping a wilted rose tight in his fist, while the rain-soaked Howery stood right there. Back in the present, the girl snapped her magic and scorched the rain into steam. Trembling so hard he couldn't even move. He gasped, totally freaked out, wondering what the hell was going on. This girl had insane power, yet nothing about her showed it. Wait, did that kid seriously pull off something like this? The girl sucked in even more magic and clenched it tight in her palm. She hurled glowing fireballs from behind her, and then he snapped them into attack range. Shattering the shield he'd raised to block her attack, he took the hit head-on. The Duke leaned over, smirking at his pathetic state like it amused him, and sure, it burned a fortune. But damn, it looks like every last coin paid off. As expected from their brand-new model. And Rain, dude straight up pulled off an insane stunt back there. Don't worry, the land meant for him will be handed over as payment instead. So just go on, die with no regrets. Rain hauled himself up, blurted that the Duke had the replication all wrong, yet that only fanned the Duke's rage. What a disrespectful fool, he spat. Who does he think he is, trying to school a Duke like me? He doesn't care if you call him a sage. He's still a low-born prisoner, and the idea that he'd sit there and let you lecture him. That's straight-up hilarious. Rain could barely process what he'd just heard. Is it a damn curse to be born behind bars? The Duke snapped, eyes hard. Yeah, of course it is. If you're forced to be born human, isn't it way better to come out noble? They don't even get that, yet they still line up to be born as prisoners. Blind, stupid, pitiful. And if that isn't stupidity, tell me what is. What is? When Rain finally clocked the situation, he threw his hands up, because nothing he said could ever beat this one. Seriously, it's just nonsense. This pig keeps whining that Rain has the nerve to stand at his same height, eat at his table, and even call himself a grand sage when, honestly, Rain never once called himself that. It was the Emperor who slapped that title on him, and this pig still isn't listening. And they even had the nerve to trash the Emperor's choice, talk about risking treason, since they're literally blood-related to him. But hey, who's listening? It's only the two of them here, so they think they're in the clear. The Duke's words slammed the truth right into Rain's suspicions. The girl trailing behind him, she doesn't feel human at all, so what is she? Right as he's trying to figure it out, the Duke snaps his hand up and orders her to finish the job because he has to get back before his guests start getting restless. A glowing magic circle snapped to life right under her feet. Right then, a massive fireball slammed through the sky and crashed straight through the Rain, who demanded to know where it all went wrong and what he did to earn this. The Duke stepped up and answered, "Come on, you know it's obvious, right? He wasn't born noble, and that's the end of the story right there." Flames surged through the entire area, clawing higher and higher until they were almost licking the night sky. Pain tore through him, but Rain grinned like he owned the world, and honestly, what a total idiot. Did that pig really think he could just wander around like he had no mission? Did he really think he'd get to talk to him for no reason at all? All he needed was time to finish the last replication and complete his final form. Replication magic can't clone real life because it needs a perfect grasp of the subject, and the truth of life is a mystery that's simply out of reach. But there's one exception. 10 months later, a baby boy burst into the world, born to the Damien family. The Duke cradled the newborn in his arms, leaned in close, and declared its name, Shivan, because only a real heir of their house could wear a name like that. Betting everything on one heir is a gamble, but the Damien family is finally safe now that they've got their future locked in. It's wild, right when his kid is born, that's the very first thing he blurts out. Gotch Damien, and yeah, he never changes. Replication magic can't copy real life, not even close, except for one brutal exception. Out of all the living things beyond anyone's full understanding, there's just one being Rain can actually grasp completely. The only life form he truly knows. The terrifying art of copying your own soul, piece by piece. This pick bragged that his biggest sin wasn't crime at all. It was being born without nobility. After Rain died, his soul tore through the skies, wandering for what felt like forever before. Finally, he slipped inside the Duchess and stayed there until she was pregnant. It was a total gamble, yet look at you now, it actually worked. He was born into nobility. Rain, the magician who'd been captured, got treacherously murdered by Gotch Damien, a noble of the true people. So Rain's soul was hit with replication magic right after. And somehow he was born as pure nobility in his own family. Talk about destiny. Rain wouldn't touch him, and now, his life was finally his. He cradled there in the Duchess's arms, held close like the world could wait. Gazing at Gotch's helpless back, he realized he could end him, right there, even with his current body. Killing him right now would mean nothing. He'd die clueless, and Shivan wouldn't walk away unscathed either. And yeah, he's freaking out about that strange girl, too. Gotch snapped at everyone in the room to raise Shivan with iron discipline, because one day he could end up as House Damien's heir. Even if the eldest son gets the head of the household, Fork won't be useless. If he's got talent, there's still a big place for him. Then she flashed a smug smirk the second she heard that. You'll be destined to shine as the perfect son. He'll seize the right to the throne and rise as the supreme heir, and he'll make them pay everything for doubting his trust. He's going to tear the Damien household wide open, exposing every polished public lie, digging into the hidden corners, and ripping out the truth about that girl until nothing is left covered. While Gotch soaks up every pleasure this world throws at him, he's got zero worries about what comes next. Then she rips the truth wide open, right when her van moves in, aiming to kill him and grab everything. Gotch Damien can afford to laugh right now. That's where Rain's revenge kicks off. 7 years have ripped by since Rain was reborn as Shevan, the second son of House Damien, and right now he's planted behind his desk. He stayed locked in, constantly practicing and sharpening his replication magic to perfection. It took forever to nail those razor-precise magical waveforms, and he knows that's no small thing. But now he feels his senses slowly creeping back. Seriously, though, nobles and commoners aren't just different. They're living in total separate worlds. Different food, different surroundings, everything. Even that mansion is guarded by barriers that keep supercharging their hidden magical power, and from the day they're kids, they're raised on rare ingredients and secret elixirs. At 7 years old, the magical power inside him already blows past what he used to have under those old rules, and day by day, his replication gets sharper and cleaner. After he finished the food he'd replicated, he shot a quick glance at the painting beside him, and it was screaming war. Their nation, the former Lever Principality of the captured people, got crushed by the holy Soji Empire of the true people, and the biggest reason was simple. The magic power gap was massive. Lever couldn't hold back the brutal magic those Soji soldiers unleashed, and according to history, the whole war got decided in just 3 scorching months. The real masters of magic tore through enemies using human modification-style techniques, shattering the ones who shrank back at the thought of desecrating life. Steven finally got what Gotch meant, and yeah, it basically hit the nail on the head. It's his fault for not being born noble. Their tech is the enemy's weapon, but he'll turn it into his advantage because he's already going to need more power later anyway. His main dream is to become the perfect heir for Gotch, and he's thrown into a wild mess of surprising luck and brutal misfortune. Just then, bam, someone knocked on his door, and honestly, luck had his back for once. Totally out of nowhere, he yanked the door open and waved the person inside. It was Azad, the maid, and he never once thought she'd be picked to nurse him and take care of him. Az, as always, threw herself into her job like it was the only thing that mattered. Her eyes cloud over, dead and empty, like every spark just vanished. She twisted her back, maybe a little too far. She spun around to check if he needed anything. He snapped back to his book and brushed it off, telling her it was nothing. The moment Azad clocked back in, she kept a hawkeye on every single move she made. He'd be lying if he said he didn't feel crushed when he found out Az, who was supposed to know about his death, was still working around this house. That is, until the truth hit him during the 10 months he spent in the womb, and he realized she was the Az he remembered anymore. He still remembered the first time Azad was given the job of looking after him. He figured she was only doing it to earn a paycheck. Still, he can't help wondering what it's like for her to care for the son of the man who ended his life. He's just some regular kid from a crummy tenement, but don't ignore the vibe. Maybe he's connected to the past somehow. But when it hit him, he realized, too late, that he'd been dead wrong. When Azad scooped him up in her arms, he felt her grip shake violently with every trembling step, and the cold scorn blazing in her eyes before, snapping back to normal the instant he sucked in that deep breath. She dropped him onto the couch, and he watched, stunned, as she deftly set his crib in place. He burst into laughter, and he couldn't hold it in. Is it really okay for him to be this happy? Does anyone even have a right to that kind of joy? How could they even let her get away with this? While Izid plays the perfect innocent maid, she's still feeding her plan to kill, like that deadly intent is about to explode right out of her small body. Even if that hatred ever swung toward him, she'd never act on it, because her fury is locked onto Gotch alone. If she even tried to lay a hand on Shivan, she'd be breaking her own vow and making it impossible to carry out. No, she'd do something else. She's probably trying to win his trust as his son and inch closer to the Duke. So Azad will pour herself into him with total honesty, no half measures. If that isn't pure luck, then what is? The moment the world started, someone who wanted the same thing was set in his path. He's clinging to the dream of plunging into hell side by side, ready to carve out a cruel, merciless judgment on that man. Yet it looks like the future will somehow still work out fine, as he can't help but wet himself a little from pure, shaking excitement. For one wild moment, he got completely swept up in it. Don't stress, Azid. About to scrub him down and have him looking brand new. She dragged him into the bathroom for a bath, promising she'd stay right there so he wouldn't freak out. But come on, he's not some kid, and changing his diaper like that is straight up humiliating. Is this meant to drag Az through it too? Honestly, all of this is Gotch Damien's fault. He'll never forgive that pig. Even now, she's still the one scrubbing him clean. Yeah, this is totally past the line. Shevin snapped that he'd handle his own baths and toilet from now on, but Azad flat-out refused. She tried to brush it off as her job. Yeah, sure. But he wouldn't let something small like this slow him down. If he's going to become the heir, bigger problems are waiting. And right now, the biggest threat is his own brother. He's standing by the window, eyes locked on his brother as he practices magic, bragging like he was a straight-up genius. This is 12-year-old Fork Damien, Gouch's oldest son and Shivan's brother, who's only 5 years old. Of course, his claim to be the family head crushes Shivan's, so first he has to shove his own brother off that pedestal. Night fell and the Damien family huddled around the dinner table, spending the whole evening together. While they were eating, Gouch leaned in and told Falk his academy transfer was right around the corner, so he fully expected his magic training to be going full speed. Falk practically burst with excitement and agreed, and Gouch added that his instructor swore there was nothing left to teach him. Gouch snatched up a glass of wine, letting out a breath. Because Fork was spared the entrance exam, yet one single slip at the academy would stain their whole house, so she hauled him into a warning to keep his pride intact. Shevin just listened in silence as Fork headed for the academy. And if fate went right, he'd be shipped off to a monastery to dodge the succession fight. Oh, and Fork's got a tiny but important request about his enrollment. He wants a servant all to himself, someone who'll take care of Aaron at the academy, no exceptions. Shevin shot him a loud, bombastic side-eye. Like asterisk nope, I see right through you. Yeah, noble families do assign personal attendants, but that's usually for students stuck in dorms. Since Falk's commuting from the estate, there's no reason for this, which means his real play has to be something far sneakier. Of course, Fork spun excuses, swearing he was born to one day bear House Damien's name, then begged to start learning how to command others right now. Gouch nodded and promised he'd line someone up, maybe a kid from one of their branch families, until Falk cut him off and said they wouldn't need any of that. And when she pointed straight at AZ, you knew she'd be totally fine. Oh yeah, that maid is Shivan's babysitter, but that job's basically over now because he's no longer an infant. Gouch nodded and warned him to stay in control, and when Falk got his father's okay, he practically burst, then told Azad, "Come to my room tonight, I'll tell you everything." His eyes rolled back like the thrill just hit him full force, at the thought of taking control of her in his bed tonight. Then she clocked the truth. Every help came with ulterior motives. Even if he's a noble, you can't get away with something like that when a real person's watching. People will notice. But when it's a maid from the captives, apparently that's somehow fine. She even spoke up. Sure, he said he didn't need a babysitter, but he never once said he'd let her walk away. Fox shot up in rage, demanding whether Shivan truly got what it meant to defy him. His eldest brother, and their father had signed off on that too. He's dead sure she's crossed a line that can't be forgiven, but even then, there's no way, not as a noble son. He can send a woman out on purpose, especially when she's just a low-ranking servant, even if she's among the captured. As a noble, no matter what's really going on beneath the surface, you're expected to stand tall, dignified, untarnished, and pure. That's just how it's supposed to be, so if she digs her heels in after that, there's nothing you can do about it. Gotch could do nothing but scramble for another attendant for Falk. Yet Zian insisted it was unthinkable for a younger brother to say no to his elder's request, and the thought burned in him as he struggled to let it go. And that sparks an idea in Falk's head. He's going to punish him. No, that's not it. A duel, that's the right move for a noble. No one can argue if they settle it like that. And if he says it with that confidence, he's betting Shivan will have to fold, because he understands exactly how far apart their ranks really are. Sivan didn't even flinch. He calmly asked if the duel meant death, and it completely stunned Falk. As a wise elder brother, you'd think he'd never say something like that, right? Shevin didn't even wait for Fox to answer. She spun to their father, Gouch, and demanded permission for a mock duel, promising they'd treat the result like it was the real thing. Gouch called it downright foolish, but he still shrugged and let them do it their way. Falk felt pure gratitude flood her, swore she'd crush the fight, and Shevin only smirked like he already knew the ending. The day the mock duel came crashing to life. Nobles packed the stage, all buzzing with excitement, desperate to catch the match. Everybody's hyped and counting down to this moment. Falkton blinked at the huge crowd, and she clued her in. Turns out they were guests from the monthly tea party, apparently. They told us it was next month, but the family just scored a batch of rare Eastern sweets, so they shoved the date back and hosted it at the Damien estate instead. And then boom, the duel finally kicked off. Fox's teacher watched it all happen. Because it's a mock duel, they're limited to just the second strain of magic. Then it's over the moment one side throws in the towel, or when he decides it's getting too dangerous to keep going. Shevin didn't mind a bit, but Falk pushed harder, demanding a wager from him. He defies his elder brother, risking everything just to lose his mate. So how's he even going to fix this once it's gone? And honestly, it looks like greed's kicked in now that everyone's watching. All right then, Shivan's gonna shave his hair, no doubt. It's a choice he'll have to make sooner or later, and he knows it. According to the Damien family's rule, any son who won't inherit the title has to quit home and step into the clergy. Proof of piety, sure, and a neat way to dodge succession wars. But if the firstborn ever disappears, they'll drag the faithful back. Convenient, right? Fork erupted in laughter and nodded along, then grinned, betting it would fit him just fine anyway. All right, it's settled. Those are the terms, and the mock duel is about to kick off. Shevin started pulling magic into his body, and a glowing circle snapped into existence on his palm. Because magic comes in 9 deadly strains, from the 1st to the 9th, ranked by how dangerous and brutal it is, and the higher the number, the stronger the spell. He swung his wand and blasted a first strain fireball straight out. That first, maybe second, strain is the absolute bottom, raw magic that's almost harmless. Forks grinned right back, snapping off a second strike spiral flare. His massive magic blew the crowd away. Even the onlookers couldn't believe it. He rockets his magic straight into her, boom, right as he lands the hit on her van. The teacher's calm shattered, and panic hit like a wave. And this sketchy old man on the balcony clocked the spell, and immediately decided it was downright crude. They're convinced Shivan's finished, like it's all over for him. Nah, psych. He slammed up a second strain anti-phase barrier and stopped it cold. Really, if that hit landed, he'd be down, no question. But now this barrier makes Fork's magic attacks useless, so Fork's eyes flashed red and he slammed forward. He lunges forward and smashes Shevin right in the face. He threw him around, rage asking what he thought he was doing. Does he even realize what he's done? Then he shut down the magic for tomorrow too. For a noble, having their magic defended is pure pride. They live for appearances and reputation in a way commoners can't even dream of. To have your name dragged into public record, and to get hit with the very same kind of spell to match. By noble rules, that's unforgivable. And yeah, in some cases, it's not even a question. You just get killed, no complaints allowed. So yeah, Falk's fury was totally justified, and his right to swing at his younger brother was ironclad. Of course, he instinctively lifted his fist, but there's a huge difference between being allowed to act and deciding to swing. When Falk finally skidded to a stop, the teacher's shout yanked him right back into reality. He scanned the room and instantly clocked it. Everyone in the crowd was huddling in whispers about how. Cruel doesn't even cover it, mock duel or not. He was fighting a 7-year-old and the kid was his own brother. By the minute, whispers about him spread everywhere, and just like that, Chivin's goal was finally complete. Fork spotted the mocking smoke curling into his face, and just as he lunged for another punch, the teacher slammed the brakes on him, right then. Then Gotch finally stepped in to stop it all, and Falk's face lit up. He told Gotch how he'd won. Just then, wham! His cheek got nailed with a brutal slap, and Gotch's anger made him shake all over. He's got nerve, humiliating him like this. He's been spoiled for his magical talent, but this is where the line gets crossed. He won't inherit this house. His right to claim it has been shut down, and the whole succession is frozen. Fork lunged after his father, but the moment he tried to follow, he got completely brushed off. Meanwhile, Azad sprinted straight toward Shivan to make sure he was okay. Then he flashed her a smile and waved back like, "I'm good," just to reassure her. The nobles leaned in and whispered like, "Look at that, pure dignity." And deep down, everyone knew he was the only one fit to inherit it. Then she shot up from her seat, grinning with gratitude at all their praise. But their march toward ruin won't be far behind. Then the crowd blew up with applause, and that shady old man just stared, baffled at how someone learned to pull off such a refined performance at his age. Watching all of this unfold is for his fist trembling with raw anger. A rogue intruder slipped into Chivin's room, like trouble had a key. He slammed to a stop at his bed and lifted a knife. Shivan burst out from behind him, slamming into his brother's path, stopping him cold for, who ripped the blanket open, then froze because pillows were hiding underneath it. Zivan just stood there, dead calm, because he'd already seen this coming. After all, their father's opinion of Fork is sunk for good by now, and getting that trust back would be brutal, not quick. And his brother Fork. He's not the kind to grind with steady, humble effort, so this leaves only one real way. If he wipes out Shivan, he'll be the last son standing, sure. It's rational, but it reeks of short-sighted thinking. He's no devil, so if he slips away right now, he'll swear he saw nothing. Just dump the inheritance and become a monk already. Fork's jaw clenched so hard it hurt, and rage ripped out of him as he shouted. He'd rather drop dead than become some monk who can't even sleep with a woman. So he went for broke and launched an attack on Shivan with the fourth string of a piercing. To pull it off with zero real study, he had to be born with talent, because pure talent alone carried him. Born with a silver spoon in his mouth, built like a tank, and stacked with every advantage life could throw at him. And somehow that's all he's worth. Shivan casually swatted the attack away with his bare hands, leaving Fork utterly stunned. The theory Fork got ignored, because if he'd actually studied it right, he'd know this part is painfully easy. All right, she's holding back for now, so he won't scorch the room, and he slings replication magic and call forth a blast of raw, blazing fire. You're gonna tell him what happens if he even whispers this to anyone, right? Falk snapped his head down and desperately agreed. No words, not a single one. Then she unleashed the fire straight at his head, scorching every last strand of his hair. So this basically spares him the whole headache of shaving his head, right? Fork stormed out for the monastery on his own insistence, while Shivan lounged all afternoon sipping tea and devouring dessert. He held out a plate to Azet, but she snapped her hands up and refused in a panic, saying a servant had no business eating sweets this fancy. Still, she didn't back down and insisted they could absolutely share them. Even nobles don't usually get to savor sweets this fancy. So he snapped them into existence with replication, then shipped a huge batch straight to the estate. Then he dangled sweets like bait, shoved them into a tea party, and let word of the duel roll through the guests. Nothing fancy, just a tiny nudge that pushed Fork straight toward self-destruction. The replicated ones tasted great, sure, but the real deal hits on a whole different level. Then she lifted the sweet up and raved about how ridiculously delicious they were. Azed nodded right along, instantly backing him up. And for the first time since Rain died, a bright spark lit up her eyes again. Years later, a carriage screeched to a stop right in front of the building. The rider burst out of the carriage in a flash. 12-year-old Shivan Damien stands there, and right in front of him looms the prestigious Largo Mayor Magical Academy. Largo, the first sage who lived around 200 years ago, carved out his own private academy here. And now it's a top-tier school where noble kids from everywhere come to study. If he wants to claw his way to the ideal heir, this is the one step he can't dodge. Right behind him, Azed shot him worried looks and asked, "Are you really going alone for this all-important entrance exam?" She even insisted she could swap in for him, then grabbed his hand and swore, "Don't worry, I'm the only attendant you've got." He stormed through the gate, and Azed was left behind in the dust. The moment he stepped inside, a nobleman was furiously whipping two workers. Like even in here, the captives were nothing but something to be abused. He can't bring AZ along? No way, not here. Mess this up, and Gotch's interest will dry up fast. Then her whole plan to slip closer to him through Shivan goes up in smoke. But don't stress, he'll bend heaven and earth to make her wish come true. Right after he stepped into the academy, a professor barked orders for him to slam his hand onto a crystal sphere for the written exam. Shivan froze, utterly confused. Wait, was this really the written exam? The professor said the crystal sphere could judge her knowledge, plus how deep and how fast her thoughts ran, way quicker and way more accurately than any old paper and pen. Shevan had no choice. He followed the order and shoved his hand onto the crystal sphere, because stalling even for a second would have made him look guilty as sin. The crystal sphere burst into a blinding glow, screaming that he had a mind packed with serious knowledge, and a perspective so wide it felt unreal. The full results will come later. Right now, the professor nodded and ordered him to push through the passage on the left. Shivan clocked the last examinee veer to the right, then immediately pulled him aside and demanded to know why. The professor said that room is where they meet a few picked candidates, basically a stand-in exam, and even nobles will hand their tests off to someone else. After he burst through the doors of the examination hall, Shivan got welcomed by the other examiners as soon as he showed up. He dipped his head, flashed a confident smile, and introduced himself. The same hit them too, the two boys who clocked him instantly. Coconut-haired Leo, the third Jering son, and the bang-part guy with that lone strand, Dennery, the eldest of the all family. And that girl over there, looks like her name might be Estel, has gotta be from the Silver family. To snatch the Gotch trust, Shivam stepped into the prestigious Lego Mayor exam, ready to prove he belonged. But those nobles who ambushed him at that party, their sons and daughters are all mixed in with the examiners. Talk about luck, huh? Every single one of them. He can't help wondering what savage schemes they're hiding behind those polite smiles. Their chat got slammed to a stop the second the examiner snapped. Practical exam, begin. He busted out magic and turned the whole situation dumb, right there. Stuff stacked up beside him, ready to rocket through the air. Now he's got to blast them out with magic, and his score goes up for every single one he knocks down before that bell rings. All right, let's start. Elio went for the third wave, but the second he saw those stones tearing off faster than he expected, panic hit him, and the flight path turned completely unpredictable. That girl examinee shoved him aside the second he hesitated to attack, then waved Essel forward to take the stage. And still roll with the fourth. He whipped back to Elio with a smug grin. Predict the trajectory? He scoffed. This isn't a shooting gallery, this is a magic exam, got it? From his perch above, the professor stared down at Estelle and couldn't hide his amazement. She crushed the fourth wave with skill way beyond her age. The bald professor beside him nodded hard like, yep. At first, it looks like pure chaos. Everyone just swings at the dummy. But once you get it, you realize the real point is to test if you can lead and command others like a true noble. A third voice suddenly came from behind them, and it thundered that the only thing they could truly trust was their own strength. It's that suspicious old man from before. So the professor leans in and whispers to the bald professor, asking who he is, because he looks way too worn out to be a teacher. The bald professor shoots back that he's their school's special advisor, and even when he got newly appointed, that old man was already ancient. Back with the examinees, Shivan cheered Estelle's performance, even clapping like a proud coach. Then he fired off the next flame arrow and blasted the dummies out of the way. And honestly, bragging about beating a kid is a trash kind of flex. I don't need victory, I need something else. It's about going so hard you don't just win. You wipe the board with overwhelming results. The smug faces of the people who laughed at him for using the second wave. They're all frozen in shock at the power he just unleashed, and Shivan swivels back to Estelle, turning her own words against her, so hard that Estelle's face instantly burns with embarrassment. The girl examiner snapped that what he'd summoned was only the second wave. Any captured guy could survive something that trivial. So Shivan nodded right along, calling it completely reasonable. On top of the world he was given for his true people's children. His body was hammered into shape by countless layers of hard-earned wisdom, until his true specialty finally showed. He snapped his hands up and hurled the fifth wave just kicked off the nitrous chain, leaving everyone crushed in defeat. Then right on cue, the bell for the end should have rung, but a professor suddenly barreled in, rushing over to the examiner to whisper something urgent. About a student who shows up way too late to the exam. It's not allowed by the rules, but somehow this one slips through. An exception, and the clock is ticking fast, yet the examiner still chose to bring that latecomer into the exam anyway. Right on cue, a girl burst into the exam hall, Seal's eldest daughter from the Frontier Marquis. Then she snapped into action at once, launching straight into the next move. Ignis unleashes the fifth wave assault. Mumbling to himself about meeting the headmaster, Zyvan could barely breathe. There's no way this is real. This look, this magic, how could he ever forget it? It was her, she killed him, but wait, can you even call her a girl? That was 13 years ago, and if she still looks the same, then she's gotta be a demon, or a succubus, because she's the one who killed him. Hold up, was that really her, or someone wearing her face? And why did she come all the way to Largo in the first place? At last, the bell blasted through the hall, snapping the exam to a sudden, final stop. At Largo Mare, once the exam ends, the top student doesn't just get a prize. They march straight to the headmaster right away like it's a royal summons, and nobles treat it as a huge status flex. The second-place kid and everyone lower, they fade into the crowd. Only first place actually matters. The examiner declared that Shiva had nailed both the written and practical exams, earning first place with the Endymion and Seal archetype. According to the rules, the top spot can belong to only one person, and the rest follows exactly how they say. A duel will decide it, and the two of them stand on the stage while examinees and professors alike crowd the sidelines, watching every move. Shivan thought Gotch would step in and stop it, but once he realized the merchant family's eldest son was watching, he backed off. Because if Shivan grabs first place, he'll land the funding too, and apparently money matters more than his own kid. The examiner's taking the reins for the duel, and he's demanding a clean, honorable fight from both of them. Now the match is ready to ignite. Two fighters step in, magic swirling between them. Ignis unleashed the fifth wave, then the Seals hit launch. And then she shut it down with the fifth wave, slamming the nitrous chain to a stop. Then he dropped into a crouch, tapped the ground with his hand, and used replication magic to copy the tiles. And the ground seal shot up into the sky under her feet, so she stumbled hard, while Shivan was ready to blast her down with a fiery arrow. When she unleashed the sixth wave keratosphere, she was praying the headmaster would finally notice her. The professor's flabber was gassed, couldn't believe she could even survive the sixth wave at that age. Then the bald professor barked from behind, ordering everyone to call the medical team just in case something hit Shivan. But the advisor slammed on the brakes and stopped them cold. She stood right there, totally unshaken, and owned the whole moment. He caught the attack in his bare hands. If he's right about the theory, then the foundation stays the same. He steals himself, then bam, he cancels the sixth wave. Right then, Seal crumpled to the ground after that earlier stumble. So could she even dodge like that? Shivan snapped his magic to mimic the sixth wave she'd just fired. With zero hesitation, he slammed it down on her. This is his return strike. Shivan, the top-ranked student, stormed into the headmaster's office to report that the exam was finally finished. Inside, the advisor sat there with the girl from before, and sprawled on the desk was an old man fast asleep. The girl spoke up first, laughing at Shivan for starting yet another scene, and for smashing a massive hole into the training grounds. Good news, though nobody got hurt because he didn't actually go after Seal. Shivan snapped an apology, then promised he'd beg his father to jack up the donation, while the girl just smirked like, yeah, this kid's got fire and a seriously spirited vibe. He can't stop picturing her as the headmaster's secretary, and his bodyguard rolled into one. Her name is Audrey, and this old guy? Oh no. He started melting like a candle, right down to the very last bit. A few seconds later, the old man snapped his head up from sleep. Tata, this is the great sage Lego himself. Lego the 100 wise noble. This is the legend you can't ignore. Around 200 years ago, the first great sage, and the mastermind behind modern string magic. Shiva swore it was all over, and he never once guessed he'd still be alive today. Largo slammed a crystal sphere onto the table, then nodded. Shivan's blood was absolutely from the Damien ducal house. But a faint alien trace still lurked in it, and worst of all, the kid's power and skill were way beyond what someone his age should ever have. He's gonna be blunt about it. Who is he really, and what secret is he hiding? And yeah, she smirks right on cue, because Lalo always sees through him that easily. Audrey burst into laughter, her mind scrambling. Was that a confession? Nope. It wasn't that at all, because today Shivan brought something way more intriguing than his own identity. He's absolutely convinced that one of the top candidates is an assassin sent to kill the headmaster, Silaka, no less. She's not human at all. She's a weapon wearing a human face. So what's he say? Does he push for them to team up? Because his enemy? Yeah, they're using that same weapon too. His arch-nemesis, a powerful great noble. Soon, to prove he's trustworthy, he'll place his head on a tray. At the Damien residence, where the trouble was just waiting to explode. They threw a wild party to celebrate Zivan, finally getting that top-of-the-class spot. A nobleman strode up to Gouch, lavishing praise on his son like it was music to his ears. The one in the hat scooted in close and hissed that he wanted to push ahead with the loan they'd been talking about. She even sat there watching everyone mingle, stunned by how wildly everything shifts just because the atmosphere changes. In a noble house, the heir is the family's other heartbeat, just as crucial as the lord on the throne. One brilliant heir pulls in people, power, and gold like a magnet, and the shadow side is just as ruthless. Gouch burst into happy laughter, clutching his head with both hands when the hawk swooped in. But who would have guessed that this so-called talentless little chick would rise up like a swan? Not a single cloud hangs over his family's future. A son who can make him feel that way is the perfect heir. So this victory salute isn't just a party, it's Zivan's proof that he's finally earned the title. Meanwhile, Azid strode through the crowd with a tray of drinks, offering everyone a taste. Yet Estel snapped, refusing anything a captive had touched. Izid could only freeze there, stunned out of her mind. Then she finally realized what had just happened. Then he hauled her out to the balcony, pointed her toward the annex, and ordered her to stay there. And she's not allowed to step out until the party ends. When he rushed back inside, Elio and the others surged toward him, desperate for him to finally introduce them to Gouch. Sivan nodded with a grin, then leaned in and said there was one last thing he had to make sure of. He hurried up to Gouch and started introducing them, one person at a time. There's Elio from the Juring family, Estel from the Silva family, and now the big mystery. How will he react when the seal hits? From the house of Akka, Shivan stared like a hawk, eyes locked as Gouch burst in with a blinding grin. People are talking about Seal like she's some kind of legend, because at her age she can already master the sixth strain. Honestly, that's insane. Then he gave Shivan a steady pat on the shoulder and told him that battling it out with talented friends is exactly what makes you better, so he needed to dig in too. Shivan nodded yes, but deep down, something else was stirring. He's totally lost. Like, how does Gotch just forget that, especially after so long? Nah, that's not it. Something else is going on. His memory got hijacked. Now all he can recall from that night is the rain hammering down as it finally faded, not the seal. Gouch leaned in and whispered that seal was the perfect pick, because the fact that she's a woman makes things way easier. If they can get her in, then her land, her fortune, and that killer bloodline of hers all end up in their family. Just as they were about to keep talking, a nobleman cut in and demanded what prize Gotch planned to give Zeven since he'd nailed the top score. Gotch spun around, asked Zeven what he wanted, promised he'd give him anything, and Zeven still said no. Inside the house, with its weird people and stacked money, magic was humming, and then there was the weapon that called herself Seal. Everything she even wanted, he's already snagged it all. The nobleman snapped at how modest he claimed to be, but Gotch cut in fast, refuse, and the shame lands on him. Then she slapped him. All right, so with his offer. There's just one catch. He'll show up later to collect it, and Gouch agreed on the spot, no hesitation at all. And the party kept roaring on until daylight finally crashed in. Right in the middle of the night. All right, Gouch jolted awake, throat burning with thirst. Did he drink a little too much? He shoved himself up, grabbed the pitcher, and started pouring water straight into his glass. But the place was dead quiet. He shouted for the servants and demanded water, and all he got was silence like crickets. No answers. He burst out of his room to check the hall, and sure enough, it was empty too. Were they all asleep? He paced through the house, checking every room and the kitchen, shouting for someone. Then silence hit hard like nobody's even there. What the heck is going on? Right then, Shivan slipped up behind him, so close it almost ripped his heart clean out of his chest. Smoke curled across Shivan's face as he declared he'd come for his reward. So tell me, didn't he promise he'd grant you anything? Gouch told him, I'll deal with it later, then leaned in and demanded, wait, do you know why the servants aren't here? Shivan actually told the servants they'd get 2 whole days off to celebrate, and then his mother went to a relative's estate on his say-so. So yeah, that's why the place is totally empty, no one's here at all. Xivan finally snapped his gaze up to meet Gouch's eyes, pure malice spilling off his face, and for his payment, he demands Gouch's head. Gotch staggered back in terror, wondering who he even was and what he'd done to Shevan, while Shevan advanced one step at a time, insisting he was Shevan, yet also somehow not, and it all screamed that this chaos was somebody's exact plan. He fired the same question at him, where do you think you went wrong, and what mistake do you think you made? And Gotch's stomach dropped, because those words sounded exactly like what he'd heard before. Could it be that his rain's bingo? For one heartbeat, he stared into a wall of rain instead of seeing Shivan, making him bolt and scream like he was being hunted. Then he scoffed that it couldn't be done, and with a surge of magic, he fired off a 5th strain. But Shivan's fire arrow slammed into him and cut him off cold. Shivan loosed a volley of flaming arrows at him and demanded, got any last words? Gouch begged for mercy, swearing that if they spared him, he'd hand over every last coin, his lands, and all the powerful connections he's got. But once he's gone, those guys don't just fall off. They turn into Shivans. Across the estate, Azad swept through the room where the party was supposed to be, only to find it already over with not a soul in sight. She stared around, heart racing. What was happening? Then she spotted a vase of flowers. And it hit him rain, that whole night on the balcony. And they relived every wild, unforgettable moment of childhood, side by side. How he trained her in magic, and how he somehow still played the part of her older brother. She let the tears hit, just for a moment, before he charges back into those holes one more time. That's when she suddenly heard someone racing toward her. It was Gouch, shrieking at the top of his lungs, begging for help. The moment he sensed she was there, he lunged in, grabbed her shoulders, and barked for the guards and the coachman. But Azad didn't move. She asked whether he was alone, and when he confirmed it. She couldn't stop herself from grinning. She'd been waiting for this day for ages. And then she threw the first sharp, cutting strike of acuteness. And then she drove the flower's stem straight into his neck. She's been grinding this one spell for ages, sharpening it into the perfect, no-mistake opening to finally put down that cautious fool. This is payback for her brother, rain or blood, and it splashed from Gout's neck in a violent arc. His eyes bulged so hard they looked like they de-pop, even in his very last moments. All he could think about was his greed. So tell me, was the future he saw just a lie? And just like that, he crumpled dead on the floor. Izid dropped to her knees. She did it. She finally avenged Rhyme. Right then, Shivan showed up, right on time. Azid shot back to her feet and admitted everything. She'd laid hands on her master, the honorable Gotch Damien, so now she's bracing for whatever punishment comes. She even demanded to know the real reason. And she answered, ice calm, that Gotch had killed the one she loved more than anything. If she'd braced for what was coming, then there was no stopping it. Shevin loosed a fire arrow at her, and as it shut her eyes expecting impact, only for the blast to miss her completely. Instead, it struck the flower she'd used to stab Gotch, before she shoved past her own confusion and snapped that some ruffian had burst into this mansion in the dead of night. Word hit the streets that the castle guard was slack, so a filthy scoundrel seized the heir hostage, murdered the duke, and vanished into the night. Yeah, that's the tale they're sticking with. Aiz's eyes snapped wide. Confusion hit him hard. What was she talking about? This was her plan. But before she could even finish, she lunged for his hand, and with his magic, he forced her to go silent, smiling as he told her everything was fine this way. Aze clocked that move instantly, because it was the exact same thing Rain pulled that day. He can't even explain how he pulled it off, and honestly, it doesn't matter anymore, so then he has to wonder, why? Shevin insisted he still had stuff to finish, but she already did more than enough. He pressed a kiss to the back of her hand, telling her she'd finally gotten what she wanted, because that kiss was the last thing she'd ever lived to see, and then he urged her to go chase her own happiness from here on out. He thanked her, then tore himself away to say goodbye to the person he treasured most. Shevin slumped on his bed, replaying the story he was about to unleash, and panicking over whether he should scream his lungs out. Azad snapped back that no scream would reach a soul, since the mansion was empty. Shevin swallowed hard, then drifted into a new thought and suddenly realized something. She's still right here, but why is everyone acting like it's weird, when she's his maid after all? Serving him is her purest joy. So from here on out, he's going to rely on her, no question. Suddenly, she puckered her lips and leaned in like she wanted answers. So tell me, was he really not going to call her his most precious person? Then her eyes flicked away, and she shrugged, insisting he was just joking. If the day ever hits when he can finally spill his real identity for everyone to see, it'll be pure victory. Meanwhile, at the academy, Lego skimmed the news about what happened to Gotch and instantly clocked Shivan, like his mind went straight there. Audrey slumped on his desk. Sure, people might guess it's just that awkward age where you blurt out cringe, but nope, this wasn't that at all. Lego couldn't stop wondering who Sivin really was. Audrey admitted he's downright creepy, but then dropped a wild theory. Maybe he's not the villain at all, maybe he's their savior. At that very same moment, somewhere deep in the Empire, the Silver family leaned toward their window, eyes locked on whatever was unfolding outside, where bodies were rotting away, tied up tight and hanging from rough wooden beams. A full month after Gotch Damien died, Shevin threw himself back into academy life and kept rolling forward. Right now, he's stuck in a lecture while the professor rants about magic, how it's become mandatory for every noble's education. Because 247 years ago, everyone still swore it was just a bedtime fairy tale. The professor cold-called Estel and demanded who dared to topple that common knowledge, and Estel shot back with zero fear. Lego, the very first Grand Sage, revived by him, organized by him, and even magic surged forward under his hands. Yep, that's the answer. Sivan's gut tells him nobody in their right mind buys the rumor that the Grand Sage is still acting as the Academy's headmaster. Yet the professor pushes on with the lecture, praising Grand Sage Lego and his wild theory of magic, that it's all superposition of waves. Power surges across the world, and power churns inside you too. When you slam those two forces together, you can pull out exactly the kind of power you want, and that's magic. The more waves you stack on top of each other, the deadlier the magic gets. Each overlap boosts the power, and the difficulty climbs like crazy exponential style. This practical, no-nonsense magic is organized by the numbers 1 through 8, and it's the mainstream everyone uses today. Meanwhile, stories like the ones legends whisper about, things like, they're breathing life into a chunk of earth, bossing a person around with a single word, then turning one into a whole swarm. A mystery-level magic, stamped as ancient magic beneath the 9th strain, so rare that even replication was treated like a forbidden secret. Ancient mysteries run on the same core rules, but compared to modern magic, they're so tangled that most people never crack them open. Some stay sealed and half-solved like black boxes. That's why when someone finally unravels them fully, glory and riches come pouring in. The morning lecture finally wrapped up, and the professor snapped, "Don't you dare show up late for your practical training this afternoon." They heard the practical training instructor is brutally strict about being tired. Like, it gets that bad. The upperclassmen in the dorm won't even mention it, like saying it out loud might unleash something. And just like that, the chaos from Ghosh's sudden death finally died down. Because Shevin, who was still in school, had inherited the family headship and was trying to keep life busy, steady, and peaceful at the same time. At least on the surface, he brushed off some female students, lunch invites, and then he pivoted straight to Seal, who was getting chased by Leo and Denarian, to tempt her over for tea at the nearby lake. Even after everything, they were left standing there, coldly ignored. Shisilaka, an assassin with one mission, take out the headmaster. No, not a person, a weapon. Steven replayed the talk he had with the headmaster just a few days ago. Lego, still trapped in Audrey's doll body, asked if he should offer his condolences, but when Chiven snapped back with a refusal and spilled the truth, Lego finally nodded and confirmed what he'd been suspecting all along. So yeah, it really was Zyvan who pulled it off, and once again he can't stop staring at the mirror like, who am I, and what am I here to do? Chevan dodged the question and wouldn't give him a straight answer, but he insisted he wasn't an enemy. Besides, if he planned to keep stirring things up in this academy, making the headmaster his enemy would be pure self-destruction. Better to team up, find a shared target, and use him when the time comes. But if Lego's still stuck in doubt, he'll shut it down fast, by dealing with the assassin coming straight for him. Before he could finish the sentence, Lego lunged in and cut him off cold. Chevan made it crystal clear. He'd already lost that weapon once already, and he wasn't the type to joke about it. Sure, her look might fool you, but that's exactly who she is. Lego knows the truth. There's no dodging it with fancy talk. But he's got one mission, save her no matter what. He even calls her a weapon. No, not a girl. But she's still just a human, and he's got to save that child. Chevan pressed him on who or what he was trying to protect her from, but Lego just shut down and wouldn't explain. If he truly knew, he would have fixed it the moment it mattered. If she can save herself, then he's already promised. He'll stop at nothing to help him. But he can't, absolutely cannot, kill her. Will she save her or end her for good? Either way, he has to get the answers first. He strode up to Seal and demanded a moment with her, just to talk. It's about the moment he finally met the headmaster, because he had to tell her something huge, and the runner-up too. The moment headmaster left his mouth, Seal froze dead in her tracks, and then she nodded along, agreeing without hesitation. Confusion swirled around Leo and Denaries, yet she brushed them off like they didn't matter. Chevan guided her to a dusty old training ground where the professors once trained. He explained it like this. Magic happens when you sync your power with the worlds, and here the outside world is sealed off, so its waves can't even reach this place, choking magic before it can start. This relic came from a time when people trained for war knowing magic wouldn't be allowed, so it looks like it was built to fight anyway. It's the ideal spot for a low-key, no-guards-needed conversation. But when he finally stares at her face-to-face again, it hits him hard. There's zero will, zero spark, not a trace of life in her. So what is he actually supposed to save this from? Seal snapped her head toward him and demanded to know what he wanted to discuss about the headmaster, while Chevan opened his mouth to explain. They heard the door slam shut out of nowhere, and fate comes crashing in from the outside. It was Leo and Denari who pulled it off. She yanked at it from the inside, but the door refused to move an inch. So when you lock the door from the outside, magic just shuts down completely, like the spell gets strangled in its tracks. Who would do something like that? A prank, right? That's childish as hell. Wait, yeah, they're kids. Of course they'd pull something that dumb. He can't help but wonder, did they pull this off knowing they'd never be able to use magic? If they did, that's straight-up malicious. Then again, it's just some kid's cheap prank. This is a training facility, after all. He spun back to face the Seal and promise he'd figure out a way out, and the next second she erupted into screams and started thrashing like she'd lost control. With her strength slipping away, she bolted forward and lunged to grab her before she hit the ground. Stunned by what just happened, he snapped, "Wait, was that a prank? No way. Did some sudden illness hit a weapon of all things?" Then he blurted out, shouting, "Seal, can you hear me?" At last, she finally cooled off and demanded to know who he really was. Chevan's eyes snapped wide with pure confusion. Wait, what is happening? She's not just changed, she feels like a totally different person. She opened her mouth to spill the next part. Then she was hit by another wave of screams. Her body surged with heat, and a seal on her back flared into view. It kicks on when someone carves it straight into their flesh. An ancient, still unfigured magic, but it screams the same blueprint Audrey uses to puppeteer her dolls. So is this one meant to obey commands from the outside? That's it, this is the room. The spell formula is freaking out, and the price of being sealed off from everything outside is that it's malfunctioning. Largo promised he'd save her, so if he can drag her out, the pain will finally stop. Now he has to race for the emergency exit, fast. No, hold up, this is some unknown spell formula. He can't crack every symbol, but if it's a formula, every single piece has a job. And if he can just nail the right part. Right there, he finally spotted it. At the training ground, where the students' practical training was about to kick off. Elio and Deaneries burst into snickers because they never heard a single crash from the door. And that's why they were sure Van and Seal were trapped inside, sealed in tight. But somehow, to their shock, the two stood there like nothing at all ever happened. The instructor whipped around to face them, and then his eyes zeroed in on Seal's clothes. Sure, they look wild, but isn't that basically a battle uniform? Seven told everyone her uniform had torn, and as soon as the instructor okayed them, their practical training roared back to life. No more disasters. All right, here's the real question. What happens next? As soon as the bell rang, Chiven hustled Seal to the exact spot where Audrey and Largo were waiting. Lego's eyes bulge wide as panic hits. Wondering why Seal was even here, Cheven calmly said it had to be done. And he's dead set on bringing Seal straight to the headmaster. So they're doing this, right? Audrey stalled, eyes narrowed. If this is some kind of joke, she's not laughing. But Chiven was dead serious, and Lego's got no reason to act any different. He promised he'd leave nothing on the table to help him, right? In the end, Logo had zero choice left. So he could swing open his office door and let them inside. Audrey frowned at Chiven, and Lego's here for one reason, to make sure he doesn't bump into anyone. So why is he insisting on this meeting in the first place? What's he really after? Forget it, that's the point. The whole goal is to grind the meat yourself. If Chiven's prediction is right, then you better brace yourself, because something big is about to go down. Meanwhile, at a lake just outside the academy, a chunk of flesh sank beneath the waterline, and the tide swallowed its descent, right as the story cut off mid-fall. Right before everything detonated, wetting the two idiots, Elio and Deaneries, mid-tea time. At least Chivan somehow managed to pay them back for what they did at the training ground. Then boom. The blast rocked the whole building, even blasting straight into the headmaster's office. Audrey instantly panicked, shouting questions about what was happening, while Chivan finally confirmed his worst suspicion. It was self-destruction all along, and the craziest part. A replication that powerful, that's flat-out impressive. Audrey's face twisted into pure confusion. He told me Seal was never meant to end up that way in the first place. Flashback, Chiven stared at the seal on Seal's back, broke it down, found the main spell, and spotted exactly what receiver it was tied to. That was lucky, because the formula was physically carved into it, and now he can rewrite it even without magic. Right as it clicked in his head, this was just like Audrey's. If he tuned it to run the right way on asterisk his wavelength, it would work, and boom, he got it done. As long as she stays close to him, she's safe now, no more pain. So the real problem is the sender. Will they clock that Seal slipped out of their grip? Guess he'll just roll with this plan. Right after they tore out of the training ground, Chiven copied Seal's body and spell formula down to the last detail, then shoved it right back into the exact form it had before he rewrote that formula. Replication can't copy living beings. It just churns out a twitching blob of flesh, period. And if the enemy had control of every part of that seal, they'd have caught it right away. So why hasn't the signal to that flesh lump shifted at all? That's what makes this so damn strange. The enemy can't tell where the flesh ends and the seal begins. Hoping he wouldn't blow his one shot, he quickly dropped the mouthful of cash into the lake and burst in with a seal, demanding the headmaster face-to-face. So the enemy grabbed the opening and blew the lump of flesh instead of sealing it. End of story. And honestly, an assassination weapon that picks its target and strikes all by itself is just too reckless. They'd need to watch it, then pull the trigger themselves, because that's just human nature. Audrey admitted it was clever, but she's still trapped in that flesh pot. What the hell is going on? At the same time, Largo suddenly clocked it. Gotch Damien's grudge isn't just talk, it's magic, and the only way this works is replication. Zyvan finally spilled the truth, and yeah, he expected Largo to catch on anyway. You can't build trust with someone who lives in secrets. So he's finally about to reveal his real self. Rain, the magician who's been holding captive people's lives in his hands, with a soul that was sealed inside a true citizen's womb and brought to birth. He's out for revenge, set on tearing through the nobles who murdered him, taking everything they own and ending their lives. He called out that seals feel important to Lego, then crossed his fingers they'd finally forge a real bond. Left behind alone, Audrey told everyone the wild things she remembered Rain saying, back when he was still alive. When one loaf turns into two, he thinks two people can finally gorge themselves. Mind and body might be different, but they're never really separable, and she, the puppet master, says that with total certainty. You can't tell the soul to stay untouched. Its vessel drags it down, and the body of a true citizen is poisoning Rain's spirit from the inside. It's not that the real citizens were born like this from day one. Largo's magic flipped the switch, and suddenly power became an obsession, to the point where they trample right through the mysteries of the human body without a second thought. No shock at all, distortions are popping up everywhere, huh? Lego couldn't stop thinking about Cheven's fate. Is there really nothing left for him but to drown in the swamp of revenge until it finally swallows him whole? Audrey said it all hinges on one thing, if there's anything to tether him or not. Largo didn't answer, just froze for a beat, like his mind was racing through something huge. Before he even dared to ask if they truly had to send Zivan into that dark silver territory. Audrey swore it matches his goals, so they should count this as pure luck, because he's marching straight into hell already and there's no turning back now. Meanwhile, she checked on Seal, firing off a quick question about whether she still hurt, since she'd been standing behind him the whole time, saying nothing at all. She blushed so hard embarrassment hit her like a wave. Seriously, didn't her outfit look like it was one wrong breath away from falling apart? It had to be that whole magical efficiency obsession, and with it looking that risky, he stepped in fast. He didn't let her head back to the dorms. He asked her to come to his estate for the day. Then the day finally ripped open, the moment they had to leave for the Silver's territory. Shivan is riding inside a carriage with Aziz and Seal, and as he straight up asks Seal if she's okay, Seal says she's fine, probably. After Audrey's checkup, everything looked totally fine, but she still tells them to speak up the moment anything feels weird or off. Seal agreed, but honestly, she doesn't even know what normal means anymore. Seal Arca, the weapon that went after the headmaster's life. All she can remember are scattered pieces of what happened before. It looked like she was obeying that engraved spell formula to the letter, no questions, no pause. Then she rewrote the formula, and the chains broke, leaving her with blurry memories up to that moment. So yeah, they still have zero clue who the mastermind really is. He grilled Audrey for answers about how it all spiraled like this, but she had no clue either. Unmeasured spell formulas just ended up that way, no explanation. Still, she told them to relax, because he'd done everything he possibly could. With everything spiraling, he nailed it, brilliantly, all the way through, so they can hand the rest to her because she'll crush the analysis. Xivan expected the Chamarquisette to come knocking about it, but they never did. Everything just stalls out, and Zil keeps living in a room at the Damien estate, like the enemy can't move recklessly because they're terrified of the proof of their whole conspiracy. If they end up with zero answers, Seal still wants to thank Shivan for saving her, though he tells her in the end that simply doing what she can is more than enough. Right then, the coachman blared that they were moments away from pulling up. In the Silver Domain, where the air felt charged with destiny. As soon as they slipped through the city gate, Seal spotted something wild beyond the window and snapped, "Chiven, look at this." Outside, corpses hung from a wooden frame, bound tight and left there for anyone to see. Those are prisoners. When Steven saw the whole situation, he snapped at Izid to stay glued to his side while they were here. Seal kept staring out the window, stunned that the citizens carried on like the world hadn't just been shaken. They're just cruising through their days like nothing's wrong. Exactly what the headmaster wanted to prove to Shivan. A few days back, Largo ordered him to head for the Silver Territory, because they'd already set up the off-campus training to happen there next. This is the perfect chance to step right into the enemy's den, so Shivan has zero excuse to back out. But he showed up anyway because he didn't come to fight. He came to demand why Largo is being targeted. Yeah, it's all tied together. He's earned the truth with what he's done, so Lego will finally spill everything, and Zivan? He doesn't just fear him, he finds him truly terrifying. He tuned Seal's wavelength to buy her one last breath, an exact life-saving fix. Then, right when she should have been safe, he trapped Shivana as his leverage, only showing his real identity after the damage was done, because every bit of it was in his plan. Shivan might not get why he's so obsessed with Seal, but he's dead set on saving them anyway. Everyone, he's hell-bent on saving every last prisoner. The Trueborns have let their power go straight to their heads, trampling even the sanctity of life. So the prisoners are paying for that arrogance, and they have to be saved. Shivan said parrots can spit out fine words too, but if their actions don't back them up, it's just a big, empty farce. It was a sharp jab at Largo, and he knew it instantly, which is exactly why he pulled back. After all, since he's the one who grants magic to the Trueborn, he's got a duty to stand firm against them. And that's why someone's hunting him, because his life is the target now. If that's the case, why did she asterisk? Van get sent to the Silver Domain. Largo barely said a thing, just that it'll all click the moment he's there. Once he lays eyes on it, he'll do whatever he decides is necessary. With Lagos's wish finally granted, he's got zero reason to stand in the way. But if the moment ever comes, he's praying, hard, that he can save Estel's life instead of ending it. It's not a command and it's not a deal, just a wish that refuses to be ignored. Turns out the headmaster had been secretly helping the prisoners for ages. Then the Empire caught on, and suddenly they started hunting him down, forcing him to go into hiding. He's on a mission to save the prisoners. Wait, Shevan's one of them too, and... So why does his mind feel ice cold? Like it's flat out refusing to let anger even enter the room. Az clocked his face and blurted, voice shaking with worry, which snapped him back to reality, and he hurriedly told her, "I'm just lost in thought." Just then, a storm of arrows screamed through the... He jerked the reins and snapped the horses to a halt, dropping straight toward the ground. The enemy strikes right on our doorstep. They weren't going for a full kill. These enemies aimed to snag Shiven alive and slaughter everyone else. Azad whipped out a dagger, yelling at Shiven to flee the bandits, but Shiven snapped back that she'd be fine, then ordered Azad to stay behind him, while the bandits started trying to force their way into the carriage. But Seal shoved him back, right as he unleashed that first wave of fireballs. The bandits froze in shock, but their leader stayed ice calm and barked orders for the projection squad to shift. They hit their marks and unleashed their flames in perfect order. Then she watched arrows streak from the sky and hammer down on them like a storm. This move isn't about power at all. They didn't chase concentration at all. They weaponized dispersion, a saturation attack meant to drown the enemy in numbers, not magic. The higher-ups laughed it off as nonsense, but it was the anti-mage plan the lowborn cooked up. No magic, no problem. They fought it for 3 straight months, and people even swear Largo Mayor's entrance exam training came straight out of that campaign. Max straps on lightweight gear and fights in tight little units to soak up the world's power, so their waves don't clash, but that also leaves them wide open to saturation attacks. An average mage can't intercept them and gets buried, and even the students who couldn't finish a full barrier in the exam have zero way out. She told Seal that silver soldiers were coming any minute, so before that he wanted to hit the bandits first. You got it. Seal slammed the 5th strain into place, stopping every arrow dead. Then Igni's assault roared and turned them to ash. So are they finally gonna talk? With an innocent grin, Az yanked out a rope to bind them tight, and once she made sure they couldn't pull anything, Steven leaned in and demanded the leader's name. She's Erica, one of the prisoners, and she doesn't just talk, she screams for vengeance over her parents. So now the big question hits. Did she set her sights on Shiven to turn him into a hostage against the Silver family? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. After years of being crushed underfoot, they finally snapped. He saw it too. In the square, the corpse is laid out for everyone to witness. That's right, those were her parents. To save her sick sister, her parents begged for treatment. So tell me, what did those monsters do to them? They promised to disinfect them, then hucked them straight into boiling water. She'll never forget the looks on the people who witnessed it, even as those faces vanished forever. Shivan clocks what's really going on. But now every one of them is his captive, and they've got no choice but to obey his every command. So yeah, he's planning to make everyone die for him, and he'll do it like it's nothing. At long last, they burst through the gates and reached the Silver estate. Estel burst out in a hurry, with 2 knights right behind her, because she just heard that prison bandits had attacked their group. So she stepped up and apologized for her parents, since they're stuck away on business. They dared to attack a duke's carriage, of all things, so now she'll never forget the disgrace and humiliation they dragged onto her. If they wanted to strike, they should have done it outside the territory, somewhere their own house wouldn't get blamed, and those worthless mongrels should have cut Chiven's head off right there. She promised him they'd hit the culprits with serious punishment, but then she cut him off and told her not to waste her time worrying about it. More importantly, he wanted her to step back and let him deal with the bandits. Estel shot back, asking what he was planning, and everybody knows the Silver law. When a beast buys a human, it gets exterminated, so there's no way he's here to show mercy, right? Right, Shiven flashed her a smile. Thank goodness, because he'd definitely gone a bit too far while driving them off. So the culprits' bodies got erased beyond recognition, and now he's trapped with a mess on his hands. If wiping them out was always the plan, what's his problem? Here's the proof. He guided her to a box lashed to the back of the carriage, then yanked the cloth right up, revealing jagged lumps of flesh that looked completely unrecognizable. The sight lit up his face, and Estel grinned like a complete maniac. And just like that, they were swept inside the estate. Estel tried to usher them into the main house, but the butler shut it down hard. No way, not without the Lord's okay. Still, Estel wouldn't back off, insisting it's only right after they've brought all that trouble, and pointing out they're not just guests, they're from a ducal house. Keeping them away just to prove a point felt weird, until now. The Damien family keeps prisoners around like their neighbors, letting them live just like regular folks, while her father spits out that they're a barbaric bunch, the kind that could someday pollute the blood of the trueborn. But if you dig into the dark pages of history, you'll find humans who weren't picky at all, lying with goats and bears alike, and the eldest, Fork, was said to be the ultimate notorious libertine. Estel Shivid recoiled at the idea that a prisoner's womb could carry a trueborn seed, because the thought was beyond unthinkable, and the reverse was just as horrifying. But he saw it too, didn't he? Shevan is straight-up irresistibly charming. She can't stop thinking about what it takes to twist your face into something that ugly, and what kind of expression they wore in their last, dying moments. She refuses to let him go until she gets the answer. So she warned the butler, don't offend them, just let them enjoy the manners however they like. Little did they know, Shivan was hiding and listening in on every word. Then he waited a few seconds. He stepped out, put on a show like he was searching for her, and played it cool. Esther spun toward him and asked what he needed. He only wanted to talk about the prisoners he'd exterminated. No matter how you slice it, he still went and killed people from another territory. So you'd better have proof, because this can't just get brushed off. Estel was blown away. Of course, the heir handled even the formalities with that calm, careful presence. But right now her father is out, and the house seal is with him. For now, Hasiel's got this. He's sure the wise daughter's seal will do the trick and fully appease Lego. Estel lit up at the news, nodded instantly, and rushed to get everything ready, then invited him straight into the study. Estel went straight at Shivan from the very start, because they didn't see prisoners the same way. She despised the city nobles who acted like captives were nothing but scraps. She must have found it maddening that her own beliefs started sounding like they belonged to some small-town mind. Maybe even her own entourage was snickering behind her back, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it was all true. As he slammed his seal down, Shivan slid her hand right onto the seal and shot her a grateful look, thanking her like she'd just saved the world. She has to be thrilled to finally meet someone whose choices actually get her. And yeah, that's just the thing. He's got zero plans to play nice with her. He's not trying to be friends, not even a little. At the former Lower Live capital, where Keefe's story begins, a letter slid into the Lord of Silver's hands, sealed with Estel's mark, but the handwriting screamed, not Estel. And now everyone's wondering, is this some scribe's work? But the moment he read the letter, panic slammed into his eyes and they went wide. And the second he read that letter, he bolted straight to the place it named. Shivan stared out the window as the Lord of Silver burst through the door. He kept pressing, wondering if it was really true that prisoners ambushed Estel's carriage, and then demanded to know how she was doing. He strode over to the bed. All he could think about was how the nobles' rumors would explode and drag everyone into disaster. Once he caught sight of her battered, bandaged face, he didn't even blink, no trace of concern. Yeah, he did, just not for the past. He looked ahead at what was supposed to be his future, and then everything hit like the plans were shattered right in front of him. At that moment, laughter burst from behind, so that's how it ends. Self-preservation wins. He panicked, and that's when his guard dropped. Erica thought watching him lose his family would make him feel the same crushing pain. But turns out he can't even muster a drop of human compassion. Staring them down, he whispers the name, Lego Silva. Lagos' eyes snapped wide with confusion. Why were they here, and was it them who did this? The letter promised it. The bandits were already dead. Erica stepped up and snapped that those bodies were fakes, or were they even replicas? She rushes in with amazing news. Because the guy sprawled there is Estel at all, it's a replica they made while she was asleep, and that's what she's betting on. So yeah, she's still alive for now, because someone's power is keeping her here. And here's the brutal truth. He's going to die right here, and his daughter is going to be forced to face her own slice of hell too. Everything went exactly the way the so-called Grand Sage mapped it. And honestly, that monster's plan is chilling. Recognition slammed into Lego the moment Rain, the great sage of the replicas, got named. Rain was alive, and that was impossible. He hurriedly tried to get it through her head. Damien dragged him into this, and there was no reason for revenge to cost him his life. Yet Erica just stared him down, cold and furious, asking if he'd really forgotten what he did to her parents, because if he had, then death was the only punishment he deserved. And just like that, she drove the sword straight through his stomach. And when it was finally over, Shyvana burst onto the scene beside Seal. Eric snapped his head toward them and blurted, "What the heck is going on? How are they still breathing when Lego's dead? This makes zero sense." Right as Shiven said it, he claimed they'd only die once, so they could strike back and get revenge. Then Erica snapped back, raising her voice, saying that wasn't an answer. He told them, "I invited you here." But once they looked around, it screamed one thing: a trap, and he dangled a tiny shred of hope just to rip it away in front of their faces, savoring every second of their despair. Even knowing they had zero choice, they still stepped into death, ready to leave at least one wound on him, so tell me why. Shiven swore that no trueborn would lift a finger for prisoners unless it came with a payoff, never just out of some petty grudge. A prisoner finally got it. He didn't care about them at all. He used them to wipe out a political rival, dodging his own hands and betraying his own kin, and the next question burned in everyone's mind. What in the world happens to them now that they're no longer needed? But right as they tried to speak again, Erica shot up and cut them off. Everyone's got secrets they can't spill, so don't play the sword that mocks and suspects. If you don't understand, don't swing. She saw the maid serving Shiven, and when that prisoner woman looked at the trueborn, her eyes didn't show fear. Only deep trust and raw compassion, like she'd never seen their kind care like that. Means isn't like the others at all. But he clocks that she isn't saying a word about it, Van included. Erica decided to drop the whole thing right there and walk away. Still, he held to his promise, and they got the one wish they swore they'd make happen, no question about it. They've already died once, and if there's any way to change things, he just has to say the word. Shiven thought he could team up with whoever was corralling the disoriented prisoners, but he never saw it spiraling into this. But now he can finally lock onto the real target. When the world shoves a brutal choice in front of you, what truth do you cling to? Is this friendship, or is it love wrapped in compassion, something beautiful, something righteous? People buy into whatever lifts them up. If it doesn't shove them down, they swear it must be right, beautiful, and love-filled. But keep your back straight and keep acting, and even trust will flip in your favor. Estelle seethed with rage after she heard the devastating news about her father's passing. She snapped at the butler to hunt down the culprit at once, burn those criminals alive, and throw them to the beasts. But the butler tried to soothe her and urged her to think about her family's business. With the master gone and the lady crumpling from grief, the fate of how Silver is handled now rests completely in her hands. Estelle stared daggers at him, trying to figure out if he really wanted to let the man who killed her father walk free. The butler said super calmly that the soldiers are hunting non-stop day and night, and they've cranked up the guards too, because catching the culprit is literally part of every soldier's job. And the only thing left for her is to keep those soldiers on the job. The moment to mess around is done. It's time to play for real. Locked alone in her room, Estelle stared at the ceiling and couldn't stop wondering what happened to everyone. Is she the only one who's really crushed by her father's death? How are they supposed to care about family drama right now? Right then, knock, knock on her door, and with a burst of anger she snapped, "Come in," since it was already open. But then the moment he saw it was her. The second she snapped back, regret hit her like a punch, and he swallowed his pride, then apologized for everything that went down while he was staying at their estate. She clutched her shoulders and told her, "Don't stress. Right now, your job is to take care of you, not that territory." Estelle's shoulders sagged as she stared at the ground. She really wants to run out and do something, but everyone keeps barking that she has to protect this house. She braced herself and asked with a shaky, desperate voice, "Why? When she's the one hurting the most, she still has to keep swallowing this unbearable pain, right?" Estelle stood his ground and fought for what was right, and he still lost his father too, didn't he? She cupped her hands and comforted her, and the second Estelle got it, her face twisted into a hard scowl, because now she knew exactly what she had to do. It's about clearing the household's problems in her territory, and striking back to avenge her father's death. But here's the thing, something S been gnawing at Shiva nonstop. Lego was murdered inside a silent, cut-off building. Then the killer vanished before anyone even got a look, fleeing the second it happened. So tell me, was it really just some ordinary criminal who pulled off that kind of act? So you're telling me someone in that house might have helped him? Yep, anyone inside that house, even him, could be the one they suspect. Estelle refused to accept it. Wasn't he there with the criminals when they got busted, yet somehow he got off clean? Still, there's no way to doubt her comrades, and with her father gone, her suspicion was probably dialed way too high. But the moment Shiven spoke next, her doubts exploded, and she started second-guessing everything. Maybe there was someone who'd get so jittery about people arriving and leaving that it practically took over their whole day. Her mind snapped straight to the butler. Crafting Shiva and smirk, that was the exact target he had his sights locked on. Later on, Estelle snapped and called in the butler, and he immediately grumbled about her choice. Wasn't she supposed to hand everything over to him in the first place? Estelle pointed out that her van is her age, yet he's already running a ducal house, so why not learn from his experience? The butler fought back, insisting she can't just trust him blindly. But Essel snapped in, grilling him, so you don't trust the ducal family. Or maybe there's some other reason he's still hesitating. She's not the kind of person who hands tasks to strangers. No way. And with the Lord's seal in her hands, nothing can spiral into a deadly disaster. If he's that freaked out, then he should stop worrying and watch it himself. Once she stormed out of the room, the butler snapped his tongue in secret, swallowed by pure fury. Lies hit harder when you sneak them into the truth. Of course it's a lie. There's no way the servant opened the door to those criminals. But the only one left standing was the young lady herself. And honestly, she might pull off something that blows Chivin's expectations out of the water. So yeah, the butler clocked that too, didn't he? What are the odds, right? Steven shuffled back to his room, flopped onto the couch, and let out a heavy sigh, because even his body's got a hard limit on what it can take. AZ slid him some tea and pressed, "So what happens to this land from here?" And he answered, "I'm stepping out, Erica's taking over the actual administration. But for now, it's still silver territory, at least for the moment." Azit's smile lit up as he pictured Erica. Because if she plays her cards right, he truly believes those captured citizens can still carve out a bright future. But Zian isn't buying it. He's convinced this land will slowly choke and fade to nothing. This is the biggest granary in the whole region, the people's lifeline, their food shield. And as long as it stands, nobody can really land a true blow on them. That's why he's handing it all to Erica. She'll manage the territory, handle the farming, and keep the economy from collapsing, because this takes years of hard-earned experience and real know-how. A farmer's daughter can't bulldoze a wall like that on pure excitement alone. The commoners soak up their brand-new freedom, until it slowly turns into decay, and the nobles only realize what's happening when it's already too late. And all that'll be left are lifeless fields and the bleached bones of livestock. It's going to hit commoner life like a meteor. Everything changes overnight. Azad couldn't help but doubt it would really play out that way, but she shot back, "Yeah, because that's just how the world works," and then she calmed him down fast. He wasn't the type to let commoners starve or anything. AZ leaned up to the window and stared out. Staring at the future, he can't help wondering if it'll actually play out like that. Meanwhile, the prisoners lit up, roaring that once everything falls into place, Erica will finally step in as the real ruler of this land. Shivan might be hiding a dangerous secret, but the truth is, he's still the one they have to bet everything on. And somehow, after everything, he's proven he's their rightful master. When the former lord's house finally cranks back to life and comes for its rightful seat, that's when it all goes down. They smashed open a wall in their hideout, and right behind it sat the hidden wisdom passed down for generations, along with ancient records that had been sealed away for centuries. Their comrades fought to the death to protect these treasures, and now they're handing them to Erica so she can finally put them to work. Erica didn't hesitate for even a second. She snatched the cloak and the scrolls they handed her. Estel's face twisted with fury the second she heard the captive's underground organization was fighting back. She snapped at the butler to keep feeding more soldiers in until every last one was wiped out. But the butler pushed back, warning that any more would start eating into their pay. Estel didn't blink. To her, the captive's blood was the paycheck, and it hit just like clockwork. Shevan charged in to choke down her fury like a true knight in shining armor, and then he leaned in and told her it was okay, because everyone else was simmering with the exact same rage. Estel snapped out of it and demanded, "What do we do now?" Because the captives kept stubbornly fighting back again and again, then Shevan played dumb like he had to think it through, before pushing her to head to the capital and beg for the knight's cooperation. The one everyone said fell under the imperial family's control. They're the blades that hold true citizen society together, but to the captives, they're not heroes, those swords are death walking in. And the Demiel family, the one that's been steering this order for generations, has never been strangers to them. As long as she shows up with the silver family seal, everything should run like clockwork. Estel nodded and agreed. Helman Demiel himself even showed up at her father's funeral, so it mattered. The butler opened his mouth, but she cut in fast, telling Estel to just end it clean and quick instead of dragging it out to waste time on nothing. Besides, what knight in their right mind could stand there and ignore a lady screaming for help? They'll march in with the sword of justice and burn evil from this land. Estel practically shouted yes, while the butler could only stare, frozen in pure horror. So the headmaster warned him to spare Estel, and while his reasons didn't line up perfectly, Estel still nodded along. Because if her entire family got wiped out, a brand new lord would step in, and the poor would get crushed again, right back under the same old oppression. That's just how power games are played. What an ending. Seriously, if this happened in a play, I'd demand my money back. So yeah, just a little, and he'll tweak the script. And just like that, Estelle finally headed out to beg the knight for its help. Estelle stumbled back in sheer panic, and sprinted straight toward Shivan, who swore she'd been worried sick the whole time she was gone for so long. She took his advice to heart, then marched straight to the knights, ready to beg for. They made her wait for 5 brutal days. The knight in charge leaned in and warned her. This deployment of the knights can't afford a single mistake, so House Demule backs it with heraldic officers and paid appraisers. After a brutal, no excuses inspection, the seal she handed over was a fake, straight-up counterfeit. They spent 3 brutal days proving who she was just to get her released, and she'd never been humiliated like that before. There's no way this is right. The real criminal belongs behind bars, not behind that cell. Now the hunt for the culprit drops right back to square one, so what's she supposed to do next? She just totally smoked them. Turns out Demule's appraisers needed 5 whole days to nail down the authenticity, and that's perfect intel for the next trial run. You know, back when they accused him of forging documents, one person stepped in and swore he'd never be able to fake something that perfectly. But just when joy hit, a sharp frustration followed, so he quietly kept training. Then it all paid off. Now he's outdone the precision of his earlier work, and Estelle's expression twists with worry as she presses. What are you even saying? Does she really need to spell it out? He figured she'd catch on faster, but Estelle snapped, grabbed her ears, and ordered him to stop. She doesn't want to hear a word of it. Still, she pushed through for 5 more days, waiting on a reply. Meanwhile, she was also stuck for 3 days in captivity during the trip, so it all stacked up to more than 10 brutal days. That's more than enough time to do whatever you want. Estelle stared in disbelief. No, she wouldn't let herself accept it, because he was exactly like her. Right, LOL, those two? Seriously, she's got jokes. Then she flicked his fingers. And just like that, right on cue, the door swung open. Erica and the crew charged inside. Even the butler has switched sides. He's all in with him now. Estelle dropped to her knees, totally stunned, like her brain couldn't even process what was happening. Prisoners, so tell me, what are they doing here? There's no way. Those monsters just murdered her father. They've been pulling the wool over their eyes the whole time, wow. And seriously, is she really that oblivious? She can play dumb if she wants, I guess. Even if she wasn't there, their blades would have still found her sooner or later. Even if it was true, Estelle was convinced the loyal butler who'd served for years was standing guard. That's right, he was locked in, watching everything. Just watching from the sidelines for now. Has already been promised they'll get proper treatment from now on. Estelle couldn't shake the question, why would he do something like that? What was his goal? What had they ever done to deserve it? And the worst part, she still didn't get how deadly her own actions were. Erica strolled, looking totally unbothered. Hand gripping the hilt of her sword, she hovered at the edge of a strike, ready to draw the second things turned. Estelle gritted her teeth. This is a takeover, and that active user won't be ignored. She'll haul them to where they truly belong and slam down a verdict that fits the crime. She smirked like she knew, then snapped, wait, you've got it all wrong. Because the nonsense in this land has always belonged to the Silver House and not anymore. They're just tossing her a tiny bit of help. Estelle clenched her fist, rage flaring hot. And he hurled the 4th-strain stone blade. The men got seized, right there, and it went down fast. But not their hearts. If she makes it to town and screams for help, there's still a chance. As soon as she stepped into the square, the citizens swarmed in, eyes locked on her. She flashed a confident smile, convinced she was a revered lady and ready to ask them for help. When the crowd beat them to it, and they were desperate for her help, every last one of them got thrown out, soldiers and tenant farmers alike, bound to House Silver, and now the frontier's security is in absolute shambles. They're terrified, an attack could hit any day, so they begged her to fix it, but Estelle brushed them off and told them to deal with their own mess. And on top of that, the prisoners had already swarmed the place where order was supposed to stand. Whispers tore through the crowd. People couldn't stop talking about how the Lord's mansion had fallen. So you're telling me no help's coming? Then they'd better sprint before it's way too late. Estelle stepped in, demanding they risk their lives to take it back. And instead of help, she got hit with their contemptuous stares. Just then, a scream tore through the square like lightning. Hundreds of prisoners are charging in. This isn't chaos, it's a full-blown uprising. The streets erupted in panic as everyone scrambled, frantic about what they were supposed to do next. Then every single gaze snapped onto Estelle. So they're just supposed to hand over the Lord's family, right? Essel crumpled to the floor, begging them to help, but it's too late. Their hands are already all over her, grabbing and guiding her like they're trying to hand her off to the prisoners. Right then, Steven burst in with Erica in tow. He demanded everyone calm down, then stepped forward and introduced himself. Even once they knew he was a duke, they still froze, because the man looming right behind him was a criminal. Yep, she's the rebel leader, all right, but everyone's dead wrong about who she really is. He hurled the tied-up butler to the ground and shouted that the prisoners' wild savagery was his own master plan, because yeah, he's the real villain. It's finally crystal clear their scheme wasn't just a strike. They were set on taking over House Silver and snatching Estelle too. People started swallowing his lies, and that was it. Time to shut down this big show. Steven swore the house had been silvered to frame the victims, and he cut them off before they could pin it on Estelle. Is that right? The butler blurted out, trying to get the truth out. But the prisoners beat him down hard, and Estelle, she can't even think about denying it. Broken and trembling, she finally swallowed her pride and admitted Zian was right. He'd shut it all down, and the whole thing was a conspiracy aimed straight at their house. She's got 0 allies left, no place to hide, no one to turn to, so she drops into a crouch in front of her and says, "Hand the rest to me." She nods and lets it happen, no fight at all. All right, this is it. Erica's taking the reins, but the trouble starts stacking up instantly. Clashes between real citizens and prisoners, the money's a mess, and security's on shaky ground. She can't juggle all of it. This land is on a straight path to ruin. If that noble steps in, he'll just tighten the chains, locking them even deeper under the true citizen's rule. Destruction has to happen, total, unstoppable, absolute annihilation. He's leaving nothing for the rightful heirs. Every last inch of this is vengeance. Erica swore she'd take responsibility for this land. Bound by the blood of her former lord, she'll step up and slam her future into the expectations he left behind. At the Damien estate, where the night felt heavy and trouble was already lurking, Izid leaned in and asked Zivan how the committee's progress was really coming. Turns out they're finally halfway there. A whole month has blown by since they clawed their way back from the Silver Territory. Now Steven's thrown himself back into student life. Ever since her father died, Estelle's been living at the academy, but that same unease still claws at her, because now fresh trouble is crashing in too. They were so locked onto Lego and the prisoners that they blew the submission deadline, and now they had to write double. Their real reason for slipping into the Silver Territory wasn't casual at all. It was extracurricular training, all business. Yeah, there's a report straight up. Steven suggested using the duplicate for the rest, but Azad cut him off. Then they caught him immediately anyway. Yeah, but there's still one more report to knock out. What a bummer. If the headmaster could have rerouted their destination, he could have dealt with that too. And since he looked wiped out, Azad pushed for a break right then, because burning himself out isn't healthy. Steven nodded along and sat down with Seal for tea, while Azad slid a plate of sandwiches onto the table, and Steven couldn't stop praising how much she'd improved. But it's not the same thing. Same recipe, yeah, but the ingredients are straight-up upgraded, and she even asked where they came from. Turns out it's coming from Silver Territory, and lately their produce has shot up in quality like crazy. Maybe Eric's actually doing great after all. Silver's new regime didn't just roll in. It's barely been a short while, and for now, things are getting better fast, at least for a while. But once it slips again, the true citizens' despair hits even harder, and it crushes them completely. Azad clocked one look at his face and knew exactly what he was thinking, so she asked straight up if he really thought Erica would fail, then smiled and said it with total confidence, like she'd even put money on it. It's not that she's incompetent. Running a whole territory is the kind of job only a pro can survive. Wait, are you sure? Somehow AZ can't shake the feeling this is how it all ends. So Steven basically said, "Let's go ourselves and see what's going on," because he didn't just want to hear rumors. He wanted to check it firsthand, and also, he's run out of fuel for the report, so he's itching to hit the field and do real research himself. Azad wants to believe a prisoner can claw his way to power and bring it back in a beautiful blaze, but Steven shuts that dream down hard. Never. But why the hell is this town blinding me with all that damn light? He's totally baffled. Somehow these guys are not only getting along, they're actually doing great. With a grin blazing across her face. As it shot back, "So what are we betting?" And he couldn't help but smirk like, "I mean, I bet right." Then he leaned in and asked if sweets wouldn't be totally lame. At that exact moment, Erica burst over and warmly welcomed them into Silver. She's doing great, honestly. It's almost suspicious how well she's holding up. She didn't have the smarts for governance, and if another noble is throwing their weight behind her, things are about to get messy fast. But Erica straight up admitted they weren't doing great at all. It was pure trial and error, over and over and over. She traces her bloodline to the great lord who once ruled these lands. Proof still survives in old records and dusty books from that era. And all the clan heads are pouring their strength into her. Yeah, that's how she's pulling it off, but it leaves Chiven totally baffled. So he told her, "I'm here to inspect," and she immediately geared up to show him around the whole town. She marched them into the fields where flowers were bursting in bloom, while Silver's brutal way of killing and showing off prisoners squashed all that hard-earned labor and turned hygiene into a disaster. Their parents would be absolutely proud, because they're the last ones to fall. Thinking back, I saw the signs all along. Young leaders banding together under crushing oppression, sharpening up for war, and even leaning on those same ancient, low-life army tricks from ages ago. But Chevan never guessed it would spiral into this. What do they do right now? Because if this keeps up, it's gonna smash the whole Truthborn society to pieces. Seeing Azit's face, he suggested they ditch the formalities and tour the city together since they were already on inspection. Zuin finally jolted out of his thoughts and snapped his gaze upward. The dark silver domain from before was still there, and it was littered with corpses. Is now a stunning, calm paradise. All of this is because of him. Most people don't realize what he's really done, but Erica will never, ever forget. So when he's in trouble, he can call her, and she'll come sprinting to his side every single time. The people beamed with relief, spreading peace like it finally reached them. Chiven couldn't forget a single detail. It was burned into his memory. After he got back to the academy, he shoved his report straight to the headmaster. Then, in the end, the prisoners saved themselves with their own hands. As for Estel, the ladies stay close, caring for her day by day, though the life she's living now is definitely not for a gentleman's eyes. Maids who have glimpsed it won't even talk about it, like the moment it haunts their tongues. She won't come out and thank the universe for saving her. She's done her time, and she's earned every drop of that mercy. All right, that's it for the report. So he went to bite his goodbye and head out, but Largo yanked him back and said, "Hold up, there's something you need to know. The Soji Empire, the homeland, has finally started to move. They're gunning for him. No, wait, they're gunning for all of them. Then their whole mission is to rally everyone. Someone from House, Akka spilled word about where the SEALs were hiding. You know something's off. There's gotta be a ruthless organization pulling the strings behind Seal the Holy Soji. And the big question is, could the sovereign nation of the Trueborn actually be part of it?" Audrey snapped, "Be insanely careful, don't miss a single detail." Then she stops and genuinely thanks him for the warning. But they're dodging way too much truth. The Silver Territory finally landed exactly how they wanted. But don't you dare get the wrong idea. His real enemy is the country's nobles, not the Empire, so he's not about to stick his neck in their fight. Yeah, it's true, Seal was the weapon that killed him. But tell me, who's blaming the blacksmith for getting sliced by a sword? Whoever he picks as his next target, because that's the only thing that truly hooks his attention. Largo stared at those captured people in silver, and somehow it didn't shake him one bit. And she flat out said no, no way, not even a little. Because even if that were true, nothing would change. He's the enemy of the Trueborn nobles and a threat to the captured people. Honestly, striking a deal with the Empire would grease the wheels for his revenge, and that would seriously mess things up for Lego. So here's the real question. How do they team up with the Empire? Wait, got it. If they just had the right token, the perfect gift to lay on the table, everything they say could flip the whole conversation. Audrey's rage flared at the implication, and she was about to unleash her magic. When Largo finally stopped her, it all clicked. He understood exactly what she was saying, and he couldn't help it. He just had to know everything. He's basically saying, don't wait, listen first, then you'll see it's not too late to judge. Audrey finally came down from the storm inside her. Then she kept poking Shivan, mocking him for having no girlfriend, like bragging rights were more important than the whole idea of testing love. But he shrugged it off and instead launched into the story of how he showed up to report the entrance exam results. That day, he looked straight at everyone and declared, "Seal isn't just a title, he's a weapon." Lego's eyes widened in shock, but he still didn't doubt him for a second. So what does he really know? After a charged moment of silence, Lego finally cracked his silence. How the great sage from over 200 years ago is still sitting as headmaster. And yeah, this rumor is real. So why in the world does he believe that? Oh, Seal just dropped a guess. Do you think it's because every magic school headmaster is hiding a mountain of secrets? With Lego, though, it's a whole different kind of wild. The moment he snagged the title of Great Sage, he went straight for immortality, pure obsession, not enlightenment, because he refused to die before he could keep tinkering with magic. Shivan isn't the type to care about old tales, but this one's got weight. So he leans in and listens anyway. And right there you can see Lego's still alive because that research finally worked. Yeah, this was the very first ancient magic he ever dug into and analyzed. Was thrown back into paradise, and it wasn't a miracle at all. It was a dull spell that only drags out his life and keeps him from moving on. And on top of that, there was a spell packed with non-stop problems. So he torched his research, making sure nobody else could ever steal his shot at longevity. He honestly thought he had it handled. Now he's realizing he should have known better. Then, without warning, he got dragged to the Empire and stared at the truth firsthand in their lab. That experiment was so forbidden even heaven shunned it. There she sat in a chair, wrists and legs tied tight. She's the whole reason the masked scientist dragged him here. They're on a mission to hand the imperial family the one thing everyone craves, eternal life. That young girl isn't just there, she's the test subject. It's not real immortality, though that form hasn't shifted a single bit in 12 long years. Lager's jaw dropped when he heard that the return to paradise that should have been destroyed is still being used. Did it slip out somewhere? The masked scientist snatched up a weapon and swore it wasn't just her lifespan getting longer. He swung his blade and hacked off her fingers, but they reformed almost instantly. Extending her life means nothing if an assassin cuts it short. But she can instantly stitch up any wound, and that power is absolutely perfect. She was chosen to rise as the ultimate human, until everything went sideways fast. She never gets to grow up. No matter how long she lives, if she can't mature, the future dies with it. Her growth froze right before puberty. So now he's handing Lego a mission, track down the cause and wipe the problem out. That girl's got royal blood in her veins, and tenement blood on top of it, making her an abomination in their eyes. Even the royal house has put out orders. Let him cut her down however he wants. The seal clamps her power tight, but even so, she still holds a brutal amount of magic. Lego just stood there, staring at the poor young girl like a total idiot. 10 days later, Lego finally burst out and vanished from captivity. With Risha, that young girl. They charged on horseback while he blasted back with magic, holding off the soldiers closing in on them. But their sheer numbers slammed into them fast, overwhelming them before they could breathe. He loosed an arrow into the horse, and the blast hurled them flying off in one wild crash. He loosed an arrow straight for Largo's arm. At this pace, Largo won't be able to cast a single spell, so he spun his gaze around to find Risha. He rushed in just to find her dangling off a cliff. No matter what, even if she doesn't die on impact, he knows the fall will leave her unable to move. He shot his hand out toward her. She jerked her hand back before he could even react. With a bright smile, she mouthed, "Thank you," right to his face. He burst off to tell me his story. Seal couldn't stop the sadness from crushing him. Shivan couldn't stop thinking about how this ties into everything going on right now, because he's figured out the Empire is hunting him for one of two reasons. Then right as it hit him, he skidded to a stop. Imperial blood, monstrous magical power, plus a girl who can crawl back to life from any wound, and the Empire's secret research facilities. Seal asked what was wrong, but she shut him down with silence, so he swallowed his pride and begged for her forgiveness instead. Before he tore open the back of her clothes, just to check whether the seal was still holding, only to discover there wasn't a single scarf in sight. Back then, all he had was the knife on him. And sure, it was just a piece of student stationery, but slice someone with it and you're guaranteed to leave a mark. He dodged the direct hit, sure. But how in the world wasn't he burned at all after taking a fireball that close to his face? Truth is, while Largo was digging into that incantation, he made Audrey verify it too. Seal is basically a copy of Risha, replicated down to the bone. He was crafted as a hideous blob of flesh, then he regenerated and snapped back into a human form. Steven thought it was just a wild guess tied to the situation. Nothing more, no proof, and absolutely no solid evidence to back it up. Lego tells him this. With Rich's specs, it's totally doable, because if the Empire can make something happen, it will chase that outcome every single time. If they catch him, his real nature will finally spill out, and they'll shove him into their research to upgrade those living weapons. A girl shows up who looks just like Risha, and she's got the power to replicate. Watching those two stand side by side, it hit him like a shock. All they ever craved was the secret behind how that weapon got forged in the first place. Audrey finally admits she shouldn't have kept it from Shivan, but she still begs him to take a hard look at what Largo is feeling. Largo was the one who unearthed the magic that could grant immortality, and because of it, Riza's destiny got twisted into a curse he'll never be able to fix. Then Zivan dug into replication, and now Zil stands right in front of them. Audrey clocked the look on Seal's face, and he asked if she was okay. Yeah, that was a dumb question because of course she was. But against every expectation, Seal was actually fine, and that shocked her. Then she snapped that she was a weapon, and if that's real, who knows how many more are out there. He even hinted it could come from some horrific creation process. Audrey's rage exploded the second she heard it, like, what the hell is he thinking a girl's delicate heart is made of? That's exactly why Seal can take it head-on. She's totally fine. Plus, if the headmaster's telling the truth, then she's not just watching. She's carrying the same blood as all those captured people, and that thought actually thrills her, because in a way, she's just like Shivan and Az. Audrey couldn't even bring herself to blame them, because after everything she'd been through, she was just about to say more. Shivan suddenly erupted into laughter like a full-blown maniac. What the hell is wrong with him? That's seriously creepy, like something's off in his head. It's nothing, he just remembered. Gouch once said he forked over a fortune just to get his hands on a seal. And then, somehow, he slaughtered the one guy he desperately needed for the research, which is exactly why they had to twist his memories and lock him away from the truth. What a complete fool. That gauche move is so stupid. Audrey stared at him with worry and blurted, "You're seriously twisted, aren't you?" But honestly, no one survives that kind of pressure without a little madness. A researcher is basically someone who plants the seeds of tomorrow, and seeing that first flower finally bloom is the sweetest kind of joy, and the kind of suffering that breaks even the strongest heart. But Zivan doesn't feel the same, and he's convinced Lego doesn't even have time to waste on something like that. He just made a brutal miscalculation. Nothing with power that insane could ever be churned out in bulk. But if Lego's words are true, then seal it. No, get that Reisha-type weapon ready. It wouldn't even be weird if there were thousands of them. If anyone's got a clue about their past, it's that man. Nijayaka, the Marquis of the Frontier, once he lost, snatched the custody of Seal for himself. Thankfully, the Aka family's power has faded, so this enemy looks way more beatable than it used to. Even digging through Shivan's past, trying to uncover those old memories, Niji still barely left a mark. He swung toward the seal and grilled it on what kind of person Nijayaka looks like from her own eyes. She shot an apology right out of the gate, admitting she can't remember it all that well. But when they first met, he leaned in and asked, "You hungry?" Then slid her warm soup like it was the safest thing in the world. She swears she remembers every bite. At the Demol estate, where everything was about to explode, Nijaka's body was found on the ground, split open by a brutal beheading. As Helman Demule sat in that chair, eyes glued to documents about Shivan and Seal, a heavy suspicion gnawed at him, because something was definitely being kept from him. But that power, he'd kill for it, so he could protect his Night Order and his beloved family. Shivan looks like he's got no bottom, like his strength just keeps going. But even the meanest rogue has a crack in his armor. He swiped to the first page, then the next one spilled the maid's info, A to Z. Then he ended it right at chapter 10 and finished with, "Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you love this manga. Have a good day."